To a very new concept for most of you, and it's called factoring. And we are going to be doing really easy factoring. And factoring is a lot of fun. And the reason it's easy is because the leading coefficient, which we're going to call A, is 1. So the standard form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, c, these are the coefficients, and that's the constant, are real numbers, and a cannot equal 0, because if a was 0, then this would no longer be a quadratic equation. So the ones that we're going to be learning how to factor, okay, these basic quadratic equations are going to be x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And that leading coefficient is going to be 1. So let's go ahead and look at, here is kind of the process that we're going to be going through. So for factoring a quadratic trinomial when a is equal to 1 into a product of two binomials. So we're going to take this x squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to break it into two binomials. Right? And this is actually quite easy when this is 1. Okay? Because we can break this into x plus 2, x plus 3, and this is in factored form. And if we multiply it, x times x is x squared, 3x and 2x is 5x, and 3 times 2 is 6. Right? And the way that we get the 2 and the 3 is 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Right? So, also know that the order of the binomials does not matter. Okay? These binomials can be interchanged and you're going to get the exact same answer. So let's go through a problem, and notice here that all these numbers are positive. So the first thing we always want to do when we're factoring is we want to identify A, B, and C. So here, A is 1, B is 10, C is 16. Okay. And we are going to factor this into two binomials. So we're going to set up our two sets of parentheses. Now the first term here, this first term is going to be x times x. Because when we multiply the first terms, x times x is equal to x squared, which gives us that term. Now we have to figure out what must the signs have to be. Right? So what are my signs here going to have to be? Well, I only have positive numbers, so my signs are both positive. Okay? And they're both positive. Are positive because B and C are positive. Okay, so B and C are positive, my signs have to be positive. So now we have to figure out what numbers we're going to put in there. And so we take this 16 and we come up with all the factors of 16. 1 and 16, 2 times 8, 3 times 6. And notice now, if it would be 6 times 3, 8 times 2, 16 times 1. So if I do it in this order, I'm going to get all the possible factors. So I put those under the 16. Find the two factors, okay, that add to 10, which is our B term. We have to add to 10, and that they multiply to our C term, 16. All right, so we know it has to be one of these three combinations, and 2 plus 8 gives me 16. Excuse me, 2 plus 8 gives me 10. So 2 plus 8 gives me 10, and 2 times 8 gives me 16. So I can factor it this way, or my answer could be x plus 8 times x plus 2. And I check mentally. So you're going to mentally multiply. Right? So x times x gives us x squared. 2x and 8x gives me 10x. 8 times 2 is 16. Right? So now we have some problems here, and you're going to get on a roll with these, and it's going to be really easy. Right, so the first thing we're always going to do is we're going to set up our two sets of parentheses. Since the leading coefficient is 1, okay, so that's 1, so I know I have to have x times x. My signs are positive, so I have to have positive and positive. So my possible factors of 8 are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. All right, so I can either put 1 and 8 there or 2 and 4. But 1 plus 8 gives me 9. So x plus 1, x plus 8. If I mentally multiply, x squared checks. 8x and 1x is 9x. And 1 times 8 is 8. And you could also write it x plus 8, x plus 1. So these are two equivalent answers. So I'd like you to pause this and try to do these problems yourselves. In the meantime, I'm going to do them. So notice with all three of these problems, right here, the leading coefficient is 1, the A is 1, everything is positive. So for every single one of these, I'm going to have x plus, x plus, x plus, x plus. Right? So because the leading coefficient is 1, x times x is x squared. And these are all positives. So now the tricky part becomes, what numbers do I put here? And it's good practice when you're learning how to factor is to take this number right here and find all the possible factors. So it's 1 in 20, 2 in 10, 4 in 5. And you notice that I go from smallest to largest, and then it's just going to repeat going in the opposite way. So these, if I multiply them, all are going to give me 20. And the 2 that add to 12 is going to be the numbers that I want. So I can mentally multiply x squared, 10x and 2x is 12x, 2 times 10 is 20. Now if you got x plus 10, x plus 2, well, that's correct as well. So now I have this problem right here. I'm going to do the factors of 18, 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. And I can see that the 3 and the 6 add to 9. Oops. X plus 3, x plus 6. If I multiply, I get x squared, 6x, and 3x gives me 9x. 3 times 6 gives me 18. Or you could write it x plus 6, x plus 3. And the last one, the factors of 40, 1 and 40, 2 and 20, there's no 3, 4 and 10, none of these add to 13, 5 and 8, and that makes me happy. Okay, because 5 plus 8 is 13. So x plus 8, x plus 5. Both of these are correct answers. And remember to always mentally check your work. X squared, 8x, and 5x is 13x. 5 times 8 is 40. All right, so you've got that. So now let's get a little bit more complicated. And what do you notice is different here with this problem? In this problem, we have a negative b. So a is 1, which makes us very happy because we have nice, easy factoring. B is negative 5. That's A. That's B. That's C is 6. Right? And I can set this up like I did before, my two sets of parentheses. I'm going to have x times x, because that's going to give me my x squared. And the signs here, okay, are both negative because we have a negative b and a positive c. So both signs need to be negative. Because if I multiply two negative numbers, I'm going to get a positive. And if I add two negative numbers, I'm going to get a negative. So now I want to know, what are the two factors of 6? Okay, so 6, the possibilities are 1 and 6, 2 and 5. Okay. And which ones are going to add to negative 5 and multiply to 6? Oops, I meant 2 and 3. So 1 times 6, 6. 2 times 3 is 6. So I've got negative 5. Negative 2 plus negative 3 gives me negative 5. And negative 2 times negative 3 gives me positive 16. So I've got negative 2 and negative 3. I mentally multiply x squared, good. Negative 3x and negative 2x is negative 5x. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Or, this answer is also correct, x minus 3, x minus 2. Those are both correct answers. All right. So I'd like you to pause the video, and I'd like you to try to do these two problems on your own and see how you do. And I'm going to work through them. So pause it, and then now you come back and you can watch what I do. Okay, so we notice this is negative, this is positive. We set up our two sets of parentheses because a is equal to 1. So we have to have x and x. Our signs, that's negative, that's positive. They both have to be negative. And so what are the possible combinations of 21? 1 and 21, 3 and 7. If we take negative 3 times negative 7, that gives us positive 21. And negative 3 and negative 7 is negative 10. Or, if you got this, x minus 7, x minus 3, that is also correct. Multiply them, x squared, negative 3x, negative 7x, give me negative 10x. Negative 7 times negative 3 is 21. All right, again, leading coefficient is 1, x and x. That's positive, that's negative. My signs have to both be negative. The factors of 16 that add to 10. 1 and 16, that doesn't work. 2 and 8, that does work. And then there was also 3 and 6 and 4 and 4. Okay, so Negative 2 and negative 8 gives me negative 10. And negative 2 times negative 8 gives me positive 16. So also could write it negative 8, x minus 8, x minus 2. Fantastic. So now we're getting a little bit, these are the most difficult ones, because C is negative. So A is 1, so that makes us very happy because we're going to be able to set up our two sets of parentheses, and we have x, and that gives us x squared. B is 3, C is negative 10. So now our signs have to be positive and negative. Okay? The signs have to be opposite signs. Positive and negative, because we have a negative C. So the only way to multiply two numbers to get a negative number is one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So take the factors of 10, 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Find the two factors that when we add them, we get 3, and we multiply them, we get negative 10. Okay? So we can see that here we have a difference of 3. So we know that if we have 5 and 2, so we want this to be positive 3. So if we add 5 minus 2, that's going to give us our 3. And if we take 5 times negative 2, that gives us our negative 10. So here, this has to be negative 2, and this has to be positive 5. And this is where what is important. It has to be negative 2 and positive 5. We could write it x minus 2, x plus 5. Okay, but notice that it can't be positive 2 and negative 5. That would not work. And we can mentally check to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. X squared, negative 2x, positive 5x gives us 3x. 5 times negative 2 gives us our 3x. Alright, so I'd like you to pause the video, try to do these 3 problems by yourselves. Notice that all of them have a negative C. So that means that for all of these, this is A equals 1. So they're going to all be x and x. And they're going to have opposite signs. And you could, doesn't matter which way you do them, x and x, negative and positive. So now you do them and come back and listen to me to finish them up. Alright, so I'm going to take all the factors of 50, 1 and 50, 2 and 25, let's see, and then 5 and 10. Well, I can see that it's obvious that my factors have to be 5 and 10, because 5 times 10 will give me 50. And if I take the difference, there's a difference of 5. The question is it positive 5 or positive 10? Another thing you can do to help yourself visualize this is set up brackets. If you're a visual person. Right? So this has to be negative 5, so this has got to be negative 10, and this has got to be positive 5. And I can multiply that to check it. X squared, negative 10x, plus 5x gives me negative 5x. 5 times negative 10. There's my answer. And my alternate answer is x minus 10, x plus 5. Okay. So here I've got my setup. I'm going to look for my factors of 24 that are going to have a difference of 2. 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Bingo! They have a difference of 2. Right? This is positive 2, so this is going to have to be a positive 6 minus 4 gives us our 2. Or you could have had x plus 6, x minus 4. Okay. That's negative. My factors of 21, 1 and 21, 3 and 7. Well, I know it has to be 3 and 7. So set up my 2 sets of parentheses. I'm going to have x and x, plus and minus. Since 4 is positive, the 7 has to go here. The 4 has to go here. And you can verify that when you multiply x squared, negative 4x, plus 7x. Okay, wait a minute. That's got to be a 3. Oops. See? It's always good to check your work. Right? So that's 7 times 3 is negative 21. So negative 3x plus 7x gives me my 4x. Or x minus 3 times x plus 7. Both are correct answers, and no, you don't have to write down both answers. You only have to give one answer. Last problem. Okay, that's negative, so we know it's going to be x and x. This time I'm going to put the negative and the positive. It doesn't matter which way you do it. I need the factors of 32. 1 and 32, 2 and 16, 4 and 8. And I can see that 4 and 8 have a difference of 4. So because this is negative 4, I'm going to have that be negative 8. Plus 4 gives me my negative 4. Or x plus 4, x minus 8. Factoring is very important, especially basic factoring when the leading coefficient is 1. So I'm going to give you lots of practice problems and have fun with it. We'll see you tomorrow.